getting ready into the mood. And I am now in the mood. I'm saying hello, Tom. Nice to meet you. And it would be awesome if you could give us a little intro in who you are and what you do.
Sure. Thank you, Ilya. Here's an introduction about myself. My name is Tom Zhang. It's pronounced as Zhang, my last name in Chinese. And I got the name Tom, by the way, for my PhD. All of my publications on my papers are under the name Tom, just for the ease of use. And I was born and raised in China. I'm not from the part of China that people are usually familiar with. I'm from the northwest part of China. If you know the Terracotta Army, if you go up even north, almost close to Inner Mongolia and Mongolia, that's in the mountains, right? So that's where I grew up. For the first 12 years of my life, I enjoyed a lot of nature around the mountains. And there's a special type of housing that's called house caves. You carve a hole into the mountain, you furnish it a little bit, you install the windows and the doors, and you can just live in a cave. So I lived in one of those caves for many years of my life. And it's a shock to a lot of people, but those caves are actually quite comfortable. Now, what those childhood memories really make me remember is my connection with nature, right? Right outside the cave, usually there's a yard full of different crops, different flowers. And in my grandmother's yard, she has apple trees, pear, plum, hawthorn, cherry, walnut, everything. So I enjoyed the freshest fruit as I was growing up, right? So that's where I spent the first 12 years of my life. And then I went to Xi'an. That's where the Terracotta Army actually is for middle school. First time, being in a big city, my parents, they still stayed in that town. So I left home. I went to a boarding school. So I was there for 3 years. And then I went to Singapore. Uh, I was in a scholarship program back in Singapore that was from 2010 to 2014. And Singapore is where I seriously started learning English. I'm very grateful for the Singapore education system. You know, they pay for everything really. My tuition, my housing, my food. They even pay me 200 Singapore dollar every single month. So it was almost like a PhD student. You know, I was being paid for studying there. I spent four years there. That's where I was. So I really got a very diverse kind of cultural exposure. Like back in China, uh, there's a lot of stuff that I did not know, I was not aware of. For example, religion and or say different races, different languages. That was very, very remote and far from my life. But after I went to Singapore, first of all, there's people are different. It was everybody from all around the world would come to Singapore, and it was just so intriguing. And I just went to all different kind of religious places. I was trying to understand like what was going on, what does it mean to believe in something, and trying to learn different languages. There were friends who spoke Malay, who spoke Tamil, and people who, of course, I learned my English back there, and it was really eye-opening. And that's also when picked up robotics, right? The third year in Singapore, I became the captain of the robotics club. And that's when I started to lead a team to the robotics competitions. We went to New Zealand for Asia Pac Championship.
Wait,
Then
wait,
we
wait,
went to the
wait,
World Championship. Yeah.
because now you're already into the robotic space,
Yeah.
and we had a little chat up front, and I always like to take a few steps back and stay a while in the space that is most likely not very often in the discussion when it comes to robotics. You were so kind to really give us a nice intro and a nice like picture of how the first few years of your life were. And if you don't mind me asking a few questions here, for example, the having the opportunity to go to the boarding school. That was something
Yeah.
that was sounds unique, especially if you
Yeah.
the high contrast of being
Yeah.
surrounded by nature and but very early on being independent, like 12-year old, being a 12-year old and going somewhere else, being on your own. Yeah, maybe you can tell me a few things. How was that for you, and what
Yeah.
kind of impact did that have? How was that possible in the
Mm.
situation? Yeah.
Mm. I really appreciate that question. This is something I usually tell to my close friends, but in more professional, more robotics community, I usually don't talk about this.
Mm,
But I was the first student to actually go to this big city to study for middle school. And usually there's no pipeline, right? So the traditional pipeline is we go to Yan'an first, which is like intermediate city, and then you go to Xi'an. So for my year, I had a friend, a classmate, whose relative was teaching in Xi'an, and she told us, "Hey, there's opportunity. You can actually just come to Xi'an, take the exam, and you can just get into the school, right? If you can pass the exam." There were about 4 to 5 people from my class who went to the entrance exam. I was the only person who passed and who got a scholarship. Some people also passed. They got into the best classes, but the problem is they couldn't afford the tuition. It was very expensive. But I got very lucky. I got very good grade, so they waived a lot of the tuition for me. I still remember it was about 28,000 RMB, and I only had to pay 8,000 RMB. So my parents were able to afford it, and that's why I stayed. Um, I was always a very blunt person in the sense that, now if I go back and ask some of my friends, they would comment that I was very different, right? I shaved my head pretty bald. I just didn't care about how I looked. And I wore these shoes that were made by my grandparents. They're cloth shoes. They're handmade with a black cloth cover and a
mm,
white thick sole. Um, and so I was definitely very different. And I have a very thick accent too, right? I spoke my country dialect in that big city, and a lot of times it would make people laugh. Uh, now thinking about it, maybe it was just friendly laughter or something like that. But I was also never self-conscious, right? But going back, so now understanding everything, maybe there were situations where people found it funny and they felt like I'm from the countryside. But to me, that was just everything was different, and it was the first time, by the way, I saw people wearing Nike shoes or Adidas. And there was one time I still remember there was so much memory just like popping up. People were saying, "Hey, look at those pair of shoes, those Nike shoes. They cost like thousands of RMB." I was like, "What? How can shoes cost that much?" It looked pretty cool, right? And so I lived basically in my own world, but I enjoyed all the friendship that I built in that school. Uh, and my parents stayed behind and worked. Studying in that city was also not easy because during the week, I would stay in the dormitory. On the weekend, I would either go live with some of my relatives or with my teacher because I just didn't have anywhere to go. And they have their own kids, right? Like kids can sometimes be pretty rough. So there's some pretty, tough memories on those weekends. So I just didn't want to stay anywhere. I formed the habit of leaving these home very early to go to school. Usually the school would open on Sunday around 6 p.m. I would get there at 4. I just didn't know where to go. So I just walked around school just for hours because I didn't know where to go. And then the school opens, I get in there, I felt more like myself,
mm,
right? Um, and yeah, I was always very confident. I was not the best student when I first went to Xi'an, but I somehow just felt like I would be okay. And so my grades just got better and better. And in my third year, so 3 years of middle school, in my third year, I already became the top student. My best grade was the second amongst 2,000 plus students, right? So in terms of my academic, performance, it was definitely that case. And then those 3 years, it was very weird. It's just like I was there to study, but at the time, there's also a lot of tough moments because my parents were not with me, and but then I also had good friends in the school, and there's stuff that I'm learning about good stuff. And by the way, I didn't know what middle finger meant
Mm.
when I first went there. So I sometimes point with my middle finger, and there were friends who were saying, "Hey, Tom, you can't say that. No, well, you can't do that." You know, and that was also a learning experience. And the other memory that I had was there's like physical education exams. There's like a long jump. You got to jump pretty far in order to
Mm.
pass. I'm never able to jump very far, but I was physically very capable. I was like, what was going on? And there was one time my dad came to the city to visit me. We went to a shoe store, and I was, hey, Dad, can I actually get this modern leather shoe? And it was a pair of Li Ning. He got it for me. I was always wearing that black cloth shoe handmade by my grandparents. And the moment I changed into those new pair of shoes, then I passed. And I actually did very well amongst all the classmates, right? So there were just like new discoveries of what was possible and what all these like what city even meant. So yeah, it was like kind of blurry, but at the same time, all these like things would come back to me time to time. And I sometimes also think about my friends who went for these exams but didn't get into the school. They're all doing like great right now. Uh, but yeah, so it's a weird time.
Is when you say that they're doing great, I mean, thanks for sharing all those, especially as you said earlier, this is not something that you usually talk about or give away very
Yeah,
easily. I mean, there's a reason why I have this podcast because I'd like to, not only because I'm curious, but maybe sometimes, yeah, you haven't thought about this because people are very focused on what's next, and every now and then it's maybe interesting to look back. Um, so would you say that these things came easy to you? Because there's a difference between even if you have talent or if you're intelligent, um, it can still be hard work, right? But then there's hard work, and then there's hard work plus struggle because it's hard. Do you know what I'm
yeah,
trying to get at?
yeah,
Some people are telling me physics and math always were easy for me, right? And I
mm,
enjoyed it. Other people said I I had a goal and I made it easy for me.
yeah,
I worked my ass off to get the things to get the grades and the knowledge and the
mm,
skills to do the things I wanted to do, but it was
mm,
not easy for me. It was a battle because so how is that for you? Because
yeah.
finishing and getting those grades that enabled you to get the scholarship, was it something that you specifically was trying to achieve to get, or was it something that came natural to you?
Yeah, yeah, I don't think I really struggled with academics.
Mm.
Um, it's interesting because, you know, when I went to middle school in Xi'an, right, every one of my friends, they would take these, like extra classes outside of school, uh, these cram school, right? And I did not have the opportunity. I didn't do any of those cram schools. I only did my homework and just paid full attention in classes. Every single class was actually incredibly interesting to me. And I put 100% of my energy into every single homework. And I didn't have to go to cram school, and my grades were doing fine, and they were getting better and better. And even before, I turned 12 back in the rural town, I would say my parents, so my mom is extremely strict. She's very strict. Um, but I would say I never struggle with study. But one thing I still remember is sometimes I was very confused by how people were very persistent on certain things, right? It's like when I'm studying, okay, so I'm like make this like clearer. I felt like I was more confused when I was growing up. When people claim things, I always felt like, how are they so certain about things? Like there could be so many confounding factors. There could be so many things that would make the answer different. So I was just really confused as to why were people certain about things. For example, a question on an exam, or say a certain take in certain matter, like in life, right? People would claim, "Wow, this idol is the best idol in the world." For example, like Jay Chou is better than some other like idol, and I was just always confused about that. right? So it was really weird. But then in terms of just studying exams, it was never something that I struggle with. And I didn't know like how it was like. But then now reflecting back, and some of my relatives would ask my friends from my elementary school how I was like, because they're sometimes confused as to why I'm able to like deliver during during these exams. According to my elementary school friends at that time, they would say, "Yeah, I'm very talented and I work very hard." That's what they said, right?
Mm.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say I struggle with academics, but I was always struggling with why people are so certain about things.
I mean, I today still struggle why people are very certain and confident in things, like very being very dogmatic about like this is the only uh, reality or this is the only way of doing things, right? Thanks for going back here and pushing the pause button. Another thing that I'm interested in is always the going from middle school, high school, whatever it is, then to further education. Because
Mm,
there's so many things to choose from. And if you have the grades, then you have most likely the capabilities and being able to choose from whatever you would like to do. I'm
mm,
always interested in, and I have a lot of people that are following me that are students or becoming students or finishing studies and thinking about PhDs. Now we come back to the point of certainty. How
mm.
did you knew that you wanted to do the things that you did?
So I didn't know, right? So reflecting back, every single step was there was so much like confusion and just serendipity and luck. So even going to Xi'an for middle school, a lot of parents were unsure if that was a good idea. They were like, okay, kids leaving home early. My parents somehow they just okay, just let him go. And going to Singapore, by the way, my parents didn't even understand what Singapore was. They all they knew was okay, this is an opportunity to go abroad to study, and this would otherwise be very expensive if you are not on a scholarship. So they sent me. They didn't even understand the contract for that scholarship. I just went from Singapore to the United States. So I went to Cornell for and I studied both mechanical engineering and computer science. Right. Uh, Interesting story. When I applied for my undergrad majors, I applied very different majors across different schools. Like for Johns Hopkins, I think I applied for biomedical engineering, and for University of Michigan, I applied for environmental engineering, and Vanderbilt, I applied for education and cognitive science. Uh, I was just looking for the best major across different schools. So like whatever is good at the school, I would just apply. And so this is very serendipitous, but I applied for mechanical engineering at Cornell because I really like building things. I have I started building things since a young age. I like to play with like clay and plasticine, and I like to draw. I drew a lot of stuff when I was like growing up, and I built a lot of stuff. I still remember when I was maybe in second or third grade. So my parents are doctors, right? And they bring home all these like wasted X-ray things, these like plastic pieces. I would use those pieces to fold into the shape of a boat or a vehicle, and I put electronics in there. So I did all that, right? So going into like Cornell is like, oh, mechanical engineering, and I check out their project teams. Oh, they built very cool stuff. This is something I love to build with my own hands. That's why I applied, right? But then I just didn't have a specific purpose, and everything was just like serendipity. Of course, that changed after a few years at Cornell. I think my interest really converged and my commitment also converged. And I think that maybe this also links back to the uncertainty and the ambiguity that I mentioned, right? I never knew like what's going to happen. In fact, when I was about 15 or 16, I always told people that I couldn't see past myself beyond 18 years old. Yeah. I was like, I don't even know what's going to happen if I'm 19, 20. I just can't see whatever's going to happen. That clarity really came to me about second or third year when I was in college. And then I was able to, I guess, pull all of my energy and commitment and focus onto, some specific stuff. But like before that, it was all just blur.
So if somebody would ask you for advice, being in that
Yeah.
stage and thinking about what to do, not necessarily only in university, it can be a later stage as well, right? People are finishing university or any degree or education and then starting a job. And we come to this entrepreneurial part later on, but
Hmm.
would you say that testing out, did you give yourself kind of a freedom to see if that is something for you, or uh, how is that?
Yeah, 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 absolutely. So while it was a blur, I definitely didn't just stay there and do nothing, right? Uh, in my undergrad, I was actually a double major in mechanical engineering and computer science. I wasn't sure what was good for me. Also, I was interested in robotics. That's why I try to do everything. Also worked in engineering lab to design MEMS, micro electromechanical systems, and design PCBs. And I was part of a project team. I designed UAV hardware, fixed wing aircraft. I designed the fuselage and the wing, and I took operations research course. I took comparative literature. I took cryptography. I took Japanese. I took German, like I said. I was trying to explore as much as possible. And in my third year, I wasn't really sure. So all of my friends they were doing internships, they were deciding to do a PhD, but I was confused as to why they were able to commit to one thing if they haven't tried something else. So I took a gap year in my third year in college, and I did three internships in a row. Usually people would do one. And I interned at iRobot in Massachusetts. I interned at Reputa Robotics, interned at Uber ATG for the entire year. I was trying to understand what was working like.
I love
Okay.
that.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
all
I
of that
do.
exploration. Yeah. Yeah. So all that exploration really helped me make up my mind. Okay, wow. Working is not for me. I tried working in companies at different stages, and I would love to have more project ownership. I would love to have more purpose in my work. So it's either a startup or PhD, right? So that's how everything happened. Basically, when I was unsure about like what I wanted to do, I just explored everything. I even took a controlled fusion class. I was trying to understand if nuclear fusion or nuclear fission would be a great idea. So, my knowledge scope is like really in all these like weird spots. When I talk to a fusion reactor guy, I was like I would be able to have a conversation. But then all of that was like exploration. Yeah, so my advice would be, if you can make up your mind, if you can make up your mind, cool. Just make sure that it's not a local optimal. But then say if you cannot make up your mind, just take your time to explore. I think that's totally fine.
And we don't need to get too technical here, but I mean, being from China and then going to Singapore, but then going to the US, is it, was it, or yeah, I don't know how it is now, but was it easy for you to take a year off?
You mean, was it easy for me to just go into these like different places? Um, I would feel like it was easy,
No,
but
no, no,
a
no.
lot. Yeah.
This is another question, and thanks that you go in this direction as well. That would have been the next one. No, just from an administrational point of view.
Oh, I see. Uh, Yeah, they were easy in the past. Going to Singapore, that was a scholarship program, so they took care of everything for me. And coming into the United States, that was the Obama era, and so the immigration was a lot easier. I actually I believe I got a 5-year visa at some point, so it was definitely not as challenging.
So because you do need to have guts, and now we're coming to the other part to decide. You know what? Wait. We slow down everything a little bit, and we take a step back, and we do something totally different, or doing something so I can get a better understanding of things, right? And
Yes.
I had a lot of people here in the podcast that make a transition or quit some things, right? And are always trying to understand what made you, what enabled you to do this, because because some people telling me, there was a lot of pressure from my parents, and I said I would like to do this and that, and then doing something else or pausing takes guts. And here I
Yeah.
would like to maybe again a little learning from you for other people, how you were able to manage that, to allow yourself to take that gap year.
Yeah. I I'm very grateful for the way my parents raised me. Uh, they, of course, my mom is always strict. I guess she's still strict. Uh, so in my first 12 years of my life, they definitely want me to do this or that. But after I left home, they couldn't help me with any of my study. So their only wish for me to be happy and stay healthy. And they did not try to pressure me to do anything. And the other thing is because, like I said, I think I'm a rather blunt person in many aspects. I also never felt peer pressure. At Cornell, I think peer pressure is a big thing. Uh, when we were sophomore or junior, everybody started to apply for internships. And sometimes you feel pressure to find an internship, get a return offer, and go straight there. But for me, I really never felt that peer pressure. I just want to figure things out for myself, right? And I think that is like, and also like quoting from a friend of mine. He's a great friend of mine, and he says, "Intensity is the price of excellence." Right. I think before you make up your mind, uh, it doesn't mean that you should just like stay put. You still need to explore, but with a lot of intensity. Like some of my friends would call me crazy when I was trying to do all these things, like explore different things. But I was just so curious, right? And I was like tireless. So that also gave me all these like energy and confidence in, wow, I'm seeing all these stuff. This is like complete open field. Well, everybody's going after that meta internship in the Bay Area. I'm looking at like a fusion reactor. I'm designing the fuel pellet for the National Ignition Facility, right? Just like after seeing everything, all of a sudden you just don't feel that pressure anymore. Yeah, I don't know if it's me as a person or if it's the fact that I was exploring so widely, or maybe it's just a co-evolution, right? So that intensity in the exploration itself is also very free.
Um, I mean, like I said earlier, I like the drive, I like the energy, and I like that you're saying that doing stuff helps you in
Yeah,
figuring things out. Doing
yeah,
stuff helps you in calming down. And
yeah.
I think this is one of the I hope this is one of the learnings that people and myself also, because I do this also as an education for myself. This kind of conversation, trying to yeah, pick your brain and get the learnings out of you guys. Um, but apparently this doing might be a very good cure against overthinking, right? This is
Yeah.
just an assumption, but it seems like you were so busy doing things that you could not have any time or any energy left for being wasted on overthinking stuff and being afraid. And I think that is interesting. But also, as you said,
Yeah.
I think it also depends on what kind of person you are, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, I think it's highly dependent on the person you are. And also, there's a downside for that intense exploration. I have to put it out there to make sure that people know. Uh, some of the classes I took at Cornell, I made it okay on the exam, but I didn't understand what was going on, right? And only after I started my PhD at Penn, I retook some of those classes, and I got a lot more clarity because at that point, I was not exploring anymore. I was going to one direction and I was able to absorb 100%, even 200% from a particular class. And that's something I did not get at Cornell. It was just a lot of breadth and a lot of information and my curiosity getting satisfied, but I did not understand the subject matters as fully as after I started to focus.
Also good learning here.
Mhm.
Um, I think now we are entering, you were just mentioning the word PhD. Now we're entering the phase of how you got into robotics, and you can now make the bridge, academia, industry, student, a researcher, an academic person, entrepreneur. Take us over that bridge,
Sure. So there's a story that I really have to start with.
please.
When I was still in a rural town, there is no entrepreneurs there. There are very few. But there was one conversation I remember. I was just walking down the street with my dad, and we met this guy. He's actually a distant relative of mine, and he started saying how he's starting a business. He was starting a business, and It was new branding for apples and pears for my region. And my dad would hit back and say, no, that's not even possible. You can't even supply all the volume needed for the nearby city or town. And my dad was throwing a lot of questions. This is not going to happen. But that guy was very composed and he replied every single question with a lot of thoughtful answers. And that person died of brain cancer eventually. But he actually built a great brand for the apples and pears. And that conversation I still remember. I was in my third grade, right? And in my entire town, that's how everything happens. Whenever someone want to start something, the everybody would question you, would doubt you, would say that's not going to happen. But yeah, but that was the first entrepreneurial guy I've ever met in my life. I still remember his name. I'm going to say it. His name is Junchen. All right. It was just it's deeply embedded in my memory. Now, throughout my life, I would not say I'm an
Yeah,
academic or
just a
I'm a
second.
yeah.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
sorry for interrupting the flow. Really sorry for that.
Yeah.
But um, it's and now I'm repeating myself.
Mm.
So for people who are listening, I need to drop this as often as I can because this is my incentive, right? And
Yeah.
people, I would like people to understand why I'm asking this, why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Um, uh, so I have a little one now, and she's like
Mm.
2 and 3 months, and I
Wow.
try to encourage her. Right,
Uh-huh.
I try to teach her as far as my capabilities are. And one of the things that you just said was like this row of questions, the questionnaires,
Mm.
and the skepticism that your father was, but he was
Mm.
confident, sure of himself,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
being able to reply.
Mm.
And it's so interesting, and especially here in Europe and especially in Germany,
Mm.
that we like and love to encourage children. Like you can
Mm.
jump, you can climb up that tree, you can
Mm.
hold that glass. As funny as it sounds, right? It's just a glass, but we don't want it to drop it. So we
Mm.
encourage kids, right? You can do this. I
Mm.
believe in you. I mean,
Mm.
hopefully, right? Not everyone gets that luxury, but when it
Mm.
comes to entrepreneurial things, especially here in Germany, people are
Mm.
always very skeptical. And
Yeah.
they always find 47 reasons why this is not going to work, why
Mm.
this is a bad idea. So people are very risk adverse, right? So I
Yeah.
liked that you said that one of the earliest memories when it comes to entrepreneurship, it was a person who was confident and who was, even though being attacked, exaggerating here, attacked by the questionnaire of your father,
Mm.
who
Mm.
is a successful person, an academic,
Mm.
a doctor, you said. So
Mm.
someone whose question and opinion means something to people, right?
Yeah.
Uh, but standing the ground and say, you know what, I believe in this and I'm gonna make this happen. So it's interesting that this is something like the encouragement and the strength and the stubbornness about being an entrepreneur stuck with you, even though this is most likely 20 years ago, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's about 20 years ago. And his confidence and just that, when I was listening to him, uh, I was very excited because whatever he was talking about, I just felt all the potentials and all the, you know, potential things that can happen with this thing that he was trying to build, right? And it was extremely curious. And as the conversation proceeded between my dad and this person, I was just starting to get more and more confused. I was like, Dad, why are you still going? Why are you still asking these questions? Right? And that encounter was just one encounter. I still remember the exact location and time of the day when we had that conversation, but it just so deeply got embedded in my memory. And I still think about this person like a lot of time. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to like talk to him before he died. Uh, but yeah, I guess this is the first entrepreneurial fire that got me really interested.
So then tell me what was, even though there was a little spark 20 years ago, what ignited, what kind of spark was it that made you think it would be a good idea to become an entrepreneur?
Yeah. Uh, I always wanted to build something. I always wanted. So the reason I did all the three internships was really to see, okay, if this is going to be something for me, and for me, purpose is extremely important. And I do not like safety, right? And sometimes when I was working at these different companies, I had great managers, I had great teams, but the thing is, I was making very good money, but I felt almost too safe, and it didn't feel right to me. And so, but I didn't know how to start something myself. Uh, and after I went to Penn for my PhD, it's in a bigger city, and Wharton, obviously, it's a big presence, and it's a business school. And there were entrepreneurship class at Penn in my third year as a PhD. So there's a lot of reason behind why I decided to start to think about entrepreneurship very seriously at that point. Because of my age, and also I was thinking about how much time I would give myself to get started and stuff like that. But yeah, I took the entrepreneurship course, and I I love that course. A lot of people would talk shit about that course, by the way. They would say, I don't learn much about it. But when I took that course, I spoke to every single speaker who were invited to talk about their entrepreneurship journey. I went to the office hour very frequently. The amount of information and lessons I got out of that class was tremendous. I would even say it's the single most useful class I've ever taken at Penn. Right? Yeah, and I was able to see the whole journey of any entrepreneur. And then I started to do, and I started, and I met a group of friends at that point, by the way. Some of them have their own businesses, some of them run their own hedge fund, or someone who started their business before. And just talking to them, all of a sudden I realized this is possible, right? Before that, I didn't even know like if it was possible for me, an academic, a scientist, to start something. But then it became possible, and still, you know, remembering intensity is the price of excellence. I started doing my market discovery, and I also trusted like the process. I started to cold call people, just trying to understand what the problem they had. And interesting thing is when I was doing uh, that market discovery, it took me about 3 to 4 months. It was 2022 in the fall season. Okay, I still remember these dates very clearly, and I spoke to hundreds of people. The response rate was pretty low. I would say about 10% response rate. But whoever decided to answer me, they told me everything. I learned so much from every single conversation I've ever had. I was very grateful for this entrepreneurial environment and ecosystem where people are just willing to tell you things, tell you about their problems, how they want to be helped, and how they think you could help them, you know? And so I was just getting more and more pumped throughout that process. And I started to see more and more opportunities. And based on my own personal background, I realized, wow, I can build these things to actually help them. Right. It was almost like a co-evolution with the ecosystem. And I bring everything from these conversation to the group of friends who I met. And also I brought these to the instructor for that class. I just discussed all of these things with everyone. I became more and more excited. And then there was a breaking point. I was like, wow, okay, there is one field I want to focus on. Then I just started. I would say it was a long build-up process, about half a year. But the moment it started, it was not stoppable.
You said two things that I'm very interested in. One of the first thing, it was just like a byproduct of what you said, or just I don't know how to say this in English properly, but it was not that of a big deal. But I think it is a big deal. Um, you were mentioning the friends and your people that you've been surrounded by, and then out of sudden you thought, okay, this is possible,
Mm,
right? So
yeah.
and this is one of the reasons why I have this podcast, because I would
Mm,
like to, and I think 2 or 3 episodes ago, I called the episode that like this. Um, Having role models is so important because it
mm,
lowers the barrier and the threshold for you as a person to make things believe that you would be capable of doing them yourself.
mm.
So if he could do it, I could do it, right? And
Yeah.
just had a conversation with a friend earlier today, and he said, "Yeah, blah 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 blah." And I said, "You know what? I've now in my journey, I've seen too many people with less skills and less drive and less capabilities achieving more than me, and that gives me the confidence that I can do anything, because, or I can do everything because um, it is nice to see the reality of how people do things and talk about things, right? So thanks for sharing that. This little piece of information is very valuable. If someone
Mm.
else can do it, you can do it too.
Yeah.
The other thing was the evolution. So that means
Mm.
the full holistic picture of how you build something or why you should build something. And you said
Mm.
something that a lot of founders are afraid to do or feel incapable or it's too difficult. If you talk to a lot of people about their problems and you be able to really distill it into a single problem that has value in terms of if I could solve that, people would pay me for that. Um,
Yeah.
that should be one of the main essence uh, of doing and building whatever it is, right? So I
Yeah.
think you through that course, through your natural curiosity and the way you behave and operate, you were able to build a very good and strong foundation for the steps that came afterwards, right? So as
Yeah.
this podcast hopefully is a little bit of educational, you are giving a blueprint and example, a perfect example on how to approach things, right? So thanks for that.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Appreciate that. Yeah. So the first part, yeah, absolutely. I think there's a saying that you are the average of five people who you're closest to, and I I believe that it's very, very difficult for someone to change just by themselves. You have to throw yourself into people who you think you will be influenced by. That's the best way to grow, in my mind. And the other aspect is, the market discovery side. I have to say it's tough, right?
Mm.
It was not an easy process because most emails would be rejections. And when I was doing my market discovery, initially I didn't know how. I was cold calling companies based on their website contact information. But those numbers will usually go to their sales team. And somebody literally told me, sorry, we don't do things like this in the US, right? Like getting answer like that is not easy. But the
Mm.
thing is, so do I give up? Right? And it's just it requires a lot of patience. And I have friends at that time who I was trying to work with, and I was doing all these phone calls every single day. They were more like a technical consultant. Um, and at some point, they lost patience, and they're like, "Hey, Tom, I don't think that this is like the way to go. I think you're too eager." I'm like, and I was asking, why am I too eager if I'm just trying to find out what problem to solve, right? And so he decided not to work with me. So I carried on with all the market discovery process. That took about 3, 4 months. And at some point, some of my lab mate from Penn, they commented, "Hey, Tom, what are you doing every day? You're calling some apple growers on day one, and you're calling someone who produces milk, and then somebody who manufacture wind turbine, just all different fields and all those conversations, and it requires a lot of patience. It's not easy. So, but it's incredibly valuable."
Bring us to what you do today and what you guys are doing.
Right. So what I do today is in late March, we pivoted. We had a previous business. I can talk more about that as well. But now we're building a robotic hand. So in 3 months, from late March to early July, we built the world's most actuated robot hand ever. Infinite degrees of freedom. And we have 108 motors in the entire hand. So every single finger has 20 motors. And if we compare this to, say, the Tesla Optimus hand, they have about 22 motors for their third version. And we have about more than 4 times of that. And some of the demos we've been able to pull off, we are able to spin a pen through teleoperation. This is the first ever in the world. And our hand can draw a circle by wiggling the finger without any wrist or arm. Also the first in the world. And almost every single demo that we release uh, surprises a lot of people. And yeah, when we're moving very fast, we're already onto our second version. So we are leading this new paradigm of robotics that we think is going to unleash the real productivity for humanity.
I mean, the gap is still there, right?
Yeah,
Humanoids are still not there. And
yeah,
one of the hardest parts of the humanoid business are dexterity, obviously,
yeah,
because this is what makes us humans so special. As you
yeah,
said, there's a lot of things that we can do that machines are unable to do.
yeah,
So you said that you were able to pull this off in just a couple of months, right?
yeah,
Um, where are you as a company now? How big is the team? What would
yeah,
be the next steps? As much as you like or are able to talk about, I would be
yeah.
very thankful.
Sure. Yeah, we are a team of four. We are pre-seed. We raised a total of $1.35 million, but not for the robotic hand. For the previous business where we were focused on agriculture.
Mm.
And yeah, and with so we pivoted. Now we are about to close seed round very soon. And so we are moving fast towards our next iteration, which will unlock a lot more new physical capabilities. And I agree that we still have a long way to go in terms of automating everything or to building a general robotic platform. Now, we so the way I think about this, right, is I think about the steepest slope that we can climb. Uh, and when I look at the robotic hand that people are building right now, they're very cool. But I think they have reached a bottleneck where scaling performance become extremely difficult. Uh, to build the robotic hand, you got to put a small motor into the joint. The marginal cost of miniaturization has skyrocketed. Well, we found a new mountain to climb. We use completely orthogonal approach that no roboticist has ever attempted. And the reason we can pull this off in 3 months is because it's almost like we're on an expressway while other robot hand companies are still trying to climb the old mountain, right? And so I often use the analogy of like Wright brothers. Of course, like they're great. I'm not trying to say, we will definitively be the new Wright brothers, but they built airplanes, so they took off flight by using scrappy parts from their bike shop, sprockets, bike sprockets and everything, because they zoomed into one principle that was correct, which was the aerodynamic principle. And we believe there's a new principle that roboticists have largely neglected in the past few decades. And we're using that new principle and we're using off the shelf parts. And by the way, the cost to build our first version is only $1,200, although we have 100 plus motors. And a lot of the materials are off the shelf from Amazon. We're using kite strings. We're using, sleeves for recovering from burn scars. And most of the stuff is like off the shelf, but we put it together. We're able to pull these off. That's why, I posted on my X account that we found a new mountain to climb, and the peak is far more beautiful.
It will be because there's a few players in the moment. I know one or two companies in that space, and it would be very interesting to see what's coming out of there. Some of these companies are trying to build foundation models. Some of these companies are trying to build humanoid attached to it. Some other people, as you said, humanoid companies are building them on their own. There's university projects that I know of that are yeah, looking at that problem. There's some open source projects that
Mm,
are focusing on dexterity. So it is a very hot topic at the moment, right?
yeah,
I've been at Automatica, and as some other people have told me from other fairs and conferences and exhibitions as well, that hands are pretty hot, especially this
yeah,
year. So I think yours is definitely eye-catching, definitely different. And thanks for giving us some insight in some like numbers inside, right? How I think this is definitely something people who are listening, who are in robotics, who are in dexterity, are very curious to hear. So yeah, I was very thankful that you took the time, and maybe you can give us a little. You were talking about raising and expansion. You were talking about the next version, but maybe you can give us a little, yeah, something that you think you would like to share, and that can be personal, business related, company or personal. Yeah, maybe I can give you the opportunity to say something that you would like to say.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to invite people to join this new paradigm shift and revolution. Uh, and our entire team is built on top of that philosophy, right? Uh, the robotics, well, the only case in human history where we have addressed all of the long tail, last mile problems is with large language models. There were many different subfields, machine translation, summarization, filtering, all of those, and a large language model came along. It subsumed all of those fields. And in robotics, it has not happened yet. And people are trying to solve this problem using different approach. Some people focus on building the hardware, some people focus on building the intelligence. And in our mind, it's not a hardware problem, it's not a software problem, it's a system problem, right? And the only way to really address all of the long tail problem is it based on our philosophy, very similar to how large language model was able to pull it off. A defining characteristic of a large language model is its sheer complexity. If I give you a one layer neural network, you can write down the equation in one line. You would say, "Wow, this is interpretable. I can understand the math." The moment I give you a large language model with 6 trillion parameters, I can still write down the equation on trillions of pages, but you would say, "Wow, I don't understand this anymore." So from quantitative change will lead to qualitative change. Now, in robotics, we've never had something like that. If you think about how people build machines, cars, airplanes, robotics, they want to use as fewer motors as possible. They want to build it in a way that it's a white box. They understand every single component, right? But we're at a point we realize by building things that way, it doesn't solve the problem we want to solve. So they will patch it up with this component, that component, and they overcomplicate things. Well, at Daxel, the way we build things is we just duplicate the same unit of motor over and over again, just like how we have all the weights over and over again in a large language model. All of a sudden, the performance emerges. While people want to use fewer motors, we throw in as many as possible, right? And if you want to know how we control all those motors at the same time to produce the behavior that we show in our videos, you should check out our podcast, check out our social media release and everything. If you're interested, we welcome people to join us.
I love this. So many factors to it, so many layers to it, and it's this is something that reflects you, like the broadness also gives the opportunity to take one of those and go in depth in exploring more. I'm very
Yeah,
thankful that you said yes. It was very quick that you said yes. So I think this is always something that makes my job easier to getting people on the podcast. I'm happy to see that you guys are moving forward quick. And yeah, whatever you're sharing, I'm keeping an eye out and saying hi to your team. And let's see if we might see each other in the future, because I really would like to see these kind of things more often in reality.
of course, hand holding experience with our robotic hand is a one of a kind experience. So if you swing by, let me know, and you're welcome to the office. And thank you for inviting me to the podcast.
You enjoy your day. Mine is about to end. Take care.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Bye bye.
Mhm.